Hello, YouTube. I'm Gabriel from the Crownless Kings, and I'm here today to talk to you about a very important change that has happened in Yu-Gi-Oh! Very recently. As most of you have no doubt heard, today, April 25th, 2012, the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG has received a change in the way ignition monster effects are able to be utilized during the summon response window, which is to say that they can't be. That is, TCG players are no longer able to activate ignition monster effects with player turn priority, much like the OCG has had for quite a while. So this, of course, is a really monumental change in the TCG competitive dueling scene, especially given that we're pretty much smack dab in the middle of a format which is dominated mostly by decks which have previously capitalized on ignition priority to make their plays. And of course, I'm talking about, Rescue Rabbit Dino decks, which previously depended on Rescue Rabbit having the priority to remove itself so as not to be hit by Veiler, as well as really big Chaos decks, they depend on Sorcerer and BLS to, even if they get torrential or bottomless or whatever, they still get that removal with player turn priority. Now that that's gone, we're going to see a lot of big changes as the meta progresses. I guess what's most influential about this change is the fact that we are a scant 2 days away from YCS Chicago. Now, about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, at YCS Dallas, Rescue Rabbit, took the number one spot. It's definitely, has been dominating the meta this format. But another surprise, not necessarily surprise contender, was it was the Chaos Dragon deck that had been making, its way around. Peter Cross, I believe, or Gross, one of the two, topped in Europe. Won in Europe with his Chaos Dragon build, and very recently Alexander Reed got second place at YCS Dallas with his dragons. And kind of, the talk amongst the competitive scene following Dallas and that top in Europe was that, okay, Chaos Dragons are going to be the deck to kind of take on Rescue Rabbit. The format this far has kind of been defined by the big three, Rescue Rabbit, Insector, and Windups, with Rescue Rabbit being a very clear winner, just the ability to get an essentially very free, big negation able beater with back row, just kind of shuts down everything pretty consistently. Alongside those three, we've seen decks that are not necessarily the top three, but have definitely, have to be considered as at least tier 1.5 for this meta so far. And those are decks that can spam pretty big beaters. Those things like Dark Worlds, which spam Grapha, Heroes, which to some extent can spam Fusions and Beast King Barbaros, alongside a lot of other stun decks that can do that. And the various Chaos decks. We saw it in Long Beach with the Piper deck that spammed Chaos Sorcerers. We saw it at Dallas with Chaos Dragons. And with this removal of priority, there's gonna be a big change in how that meta is defined. Rescue Rabbit deck has of course been hurt pretty terribly. Now people can affect Veiler Rescue Rabbit. People can change its appearance Rescue Rabbit, and those are gonna see those. I mean, I'd be really surprised if Rescue Rabbit took a majority, if more than a spot or two in like the top 32 from YCS is following this, because there's just so many ways to stop the play now that previously just weren't there. Windups have been slowly losing popularity. A lot of the more competitive duelists have kind of shied away, except for a very few. And this lack of priority, not necessarily has hurt them in a major way, but it does mean that certain combos are no longer as viable. You no longer can go Zen Mighty into the Hunter without the fear of bottomless, removing your discard, that kind of thing. Let's see. Insectors weren't really hit by this change. I'm sure Insector players are pretty happy because their main opposition at this point had been either Chaos Dragons or Rescue Rabbit, and by not being hurt by priority, Insectors are definitely going to shine a lot more. That Hopper caliber build has been doing very strong at regionals. Gruff or Ladybug or whatever they're calling it is set to come out in a couple weeks. So Insectors are in a pretty good place. Anti-meta decks, stun decks are probably going to see a rise in popularity. These traps that, depend on lack of priority. Things like Bottomless, Chain Disappearance, Compulsory, even Trap Hole, I guess, Torrential, are just so much more powerful now that opponent, they can't get their effects off. It's one thing to Bottomless a BLS after it's removed your Spirit Reaper or whatever was protecting you, or your big boss. It's another thing to completely, Bottomless the BLS and they have no, it's a 1-for-1. They lost their big beater. So definitely things like Heroes, which don't utilize priority at all, you're going to see a lot more play. Dark World's Trance Archfiend was hit a little bit, but I mean, it's still, if it's a story, they still get its effect, and that's what Dark Worlds care about mostly. Mostly anti-stun, anti-meta rather. We're gonna see some big changes in like side deck versus main deck choices. So very recently, people have been moving Valor to the side deck, because Rescue Rabbit is is the deck kind of to beat. Chaos Dragon's a little behind it, and then Insectors, Windups, Heroes kind of making up that third rung of the top tier. But now with priority gone, Valor is a much more powerful card, and decks that can run 3 and can capitalize off the light in the grave after the fact are going to be very powerful, especially if they're not hurt by Valor immensely. Things that come to mind, Dark World, Heroes, Six Samurai are probably going to become a lot more popular, if not just better overall. We're going to start seeing a lot more main deck Bottomless Trap Hole. We were so following the topping of Chaos Dragons, we were seeing a lot of talk of like Bottomless Trap Hole as kind of a staple again, because you have to get rid of like the Light Pulsar or the Red Eyes Darkness Metal to stop the loop there. Bottomless hits whatever dino they bring out with Rescue Rabbit. It's not really good against Insectors because Dragonfly. It's decent in windups because you can hit the Shark or you can hit their XYZ, whatever, but Tyrus kind of, nullifies that. And Bottomless has always been decently good against, anti-meta. But now you're going to see a lot more of the Bottomless because, as I mentioned earlier, with Chaos Monsters, Bottomless means they don't get to remove the powerful monster they needed to. It means that plays where they should plus off of removal means they'll just equal, if not minus, depending on what they need to do to summon it. It also means that, the big beefy monsters we've been seeing that have kind of dominated the meta are going to see a lot less play. In that same vein, Chain Disappearance is a whole lot better because the power cards this format, beyond like the big bosses, have definitely been the small monsters, the Rescue Rabbits, the Tour Guides, the Wind-Up Rats, the Centipede, the Dragonflies. And Chain Disappearance just kind of says, fuck you guys, no, you don't get to do that. And, Chain Disappearance had always been marginally good, against some of those, but now it hits almost all of those amazingly well, and I'd be really surprised if you didn't see that in every side deck this upcoming weekend in Chicago, and then a month from now at Philly. Kind of the offside of that, you're going to see a lot less play of Fiendish Chain, because Fiendish Chain doesn't do it like Fiendish Chain. While still an amazing card, it's a skill drain on what you want it to be. It's just not as good anymore, because why Fiendish Chain a Rescue Rabbit? Because that doesn't do anything. You can't, don't even bother. But, you can Valor the rabbit and then run it over. Or you can Chain Disappearance the rabbit and it's gone. So Fiendish Chain is probably going to see a lot less play. Um, in the same vein, there's a little speculation that like things like Max C might see less play because those like powerful special summoning decks, Chaos Dragons, Rescue Rabbit, Wind Up, are gonna see less play now that priority is gone because their plays are a little slowed down now. So expect to see Max C to like maybe one in the side, one main, maybe just one in the side, that kind of thing. So it'll be definitely interesting to see how the meta develops, and these are things that you should definitely consider while you're like building your deck and preparing for either regionals or locals or YCSs, especially as we head into the summer with nationals in June. The side deck is so much more important now. The main deck is almost completely revamped. It's going to be really interesting to see what tops Chicago because that'll probably be what defines the rest of this meta leading up to nationals. And if you already currently play a deck that doesn't rely on priority, then your deck just got a lot better. It probably moved up half a tier, if not an entire tier. Whereas things, as powerful as the Rescue Rabbit engine is, with all these outs to it that exist now, it's probably moved back down to like tier 1.5, if not tier 2, just because no one wants to play a deck that can be sided against easily or stopped in its tracks completely, and then you just stop the engine. So as for predictions, definitely expect to see a lot more Insectors, because Insectors never had priority to the extent that they could utilize it well. They didn't really care about priority, and now that the priority's gone, they're just that much better because they don't have to worry about things like Chaos Sorcerer or Rescue Rabbit or BLS or that kind of thing. That can kind of shut down their plays. As I mentioned earlier, anti-meta decks are now a lot better for the most part. Things like TG, Heroes, Dark Worlds, a lot better now because they never really had priority effects in the first place. So their traps just become a lot stronger. And the deck that I personally feel is gonna be I guess not even the surprise contender, but the returning champ from this time last year, in fact, is Six Samurai. Six Samurai decks nowadays, they don't play a lot of Kageki. Kageki's more of a bait for the Veiler so that they can Shein anyway. They can easily main or side into D-Fissure if they fear, the Chaos decks or the hand traps, the Pup Plants, the Maxis, that kind of thing. So now that Six Samurai don't have to contend with going second to someone who opens Rescue Rabbit or being looped from windups, you should definitely expect to see Six Samurai as a very more popular, if not one of the most powerful decks. They have no priority effects, at least in the builds that have topped in the past year or so. All of their big bosses negate something, which is phenomenal given that it seems like we're going to be heading to a more trap-heavy end of the format. And they're Six Samurai. They can spam, they can swarm, they can play it slow. They have Magatama, so you summon your Shien and they're like, oh, okay, whatever, bottomless. Or they change its appearance. Your Kageki. They Six Samurai can play the traps while still being fast enough to just obliterate you. So definitely expect to see Six Samurai. Definitely expect to see Insectors. A lot more trap-heavy anti-meta decks. And expect to see a decrease in Chaos. Chaos and Rescue Rabbit, because Rescue Rabbit just sucks kind of now. Chaos decks, especially Chaos Dragons, really needed, they needed the Red Eyes Darkness Metal, special summoning. They needed the BLS, the Chaos Sorcerer. They needed the Leviair. Losing a Leviair special summon priority effect is just crazy because decks have topped entire YCSs based on that one ability, the ability to just recycle things from your remove from play using Leviair, regardless of whether they have torrential or bottomless. So just expect a complete change, and please subscribe. We're going to be a lot more involved with the channel as as we head into the summer. And we definitely want to hear like your opinions, like if you agree with things I said, or if you think I've underestimated a deck or overestimated another one. So comment, like, subscribe. So yeah, hope you guys like the video, and please comment.